Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans. Welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of ProduceBuzz.com. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the founder and president of Produce Buzz, along with Rick Stepp and Cynthia Benedetto, both contributing editors to Produce Buzz. Today, we have an extraordinary guest on the show with a fascinating mission in the world of fresh fruits and veggies. This man has to be one of the foremost experts, if not the foremost expert, on the amazing diversity of edible plants that Mother Nature has to offer. He has been traveling the world for many years looking for and cataloging thousands of fruits and vegetables and their seemingly endless varieties. And he is going to tell us all about that adventure today and what he has achieved. Today's guest is Bob Harrington, the president of Specialty Produce, a wholesaler of fresh fruits and vegetables, primarily to restaurants in San Diego, California. Bob began his entrepreneurial career in 1977 when he opened La Jolla Produce, a small retail outlet in La Jolla, California, specializing in locally grown fruits and vegetables. Bob established Specialty Produce with his two brothers in 1989, tapping into the city's culinary scene. Specialty Produce sells every type of fruit and vegetable, but as the name implies, they have become an invaluable source for chefs of more exotic, rare, and hard-to-find varieties. These are very important in setting apart the menus in the highly competitive restaurant industry. Since their humble beginnings, Specialty Produce has continued to expand, offering deliveries 7 days a week, organics, a farmer's market program, online ordering for customers, and an extensive website based on information harvested straight from the source. They are the leading supplier of fruits and vegetables to hundreds of restaurants in the greater San Diego area and across Southern California. Harnessing forward-thinking technology, media, and logistics, Specialty Produce brings opportunity to the food industry. And Bob sees the value of nurturing the relationship with his customers, farmers, and the local community, and creating collaboration between them. Welcome to the show, Bob. We're so delighted to have you.
I'm super honored to be here and to meet you guys, and it's great to meet you at the PMA. They don't call it PMA anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, the IFPA. All these acronyms are hard to keep up with.
It'll take me a couple of years to memorize that.
Yeah, that was a real pleasure for me because I've known about you and your company. I've even visited there, but you were off somewhere on the other side of the globe searching for some strange fruit.
I think stalking is a more accurate description.
It could be. But when we happened to just meet there and I saw your badge, I went, oh man, I have to introduce myself. So it was a real delight, a real pleasure for me. Well, let's learn a little bit about before we get to that incredible mission, which I want to focus on today because I think our listeners will be fascinated to hear what you've done there. But I want to hear about your background and how you got into the produce business, what drove you to get into such a crazy 24/7 hardworking.
Well, actually, I had a really good experience when I was a teenager. I went to work for a major chain store in Los Angeles. I grew up in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And it was a great job. And one day the produce manager, I worked as a box boy, and he came up to me and he goes, "I've been watching you work for a few months. I really want you in my department." And so I went there. I transferred over. I got promoted over to the produce department. And then one summer, he ended up getting having an illness, and he left. And then there were these two young guys that came into the produce department, and one of them was just back from Vietnam. And they were, one of the guys was very colorful and more of the artistic type, although we didn't use that or think like that back in the late 60s, early 70s. You know, I wasn't really at the level of life where I distinguish art from work.
Right.
So he would tell me, he would say, this is, we have to come to work here and we have to really make nice displays. And so he taught me how to begin making these really nice displays. And we began getting a lot of attention from the other people in the store and that kind of thing. So it kind of gets into your blood, right?
Yeah.
So then I started college the next year, and I really I got the produce bite. So I would leave my classes and I'd drive around LA and I would go into produce markets. Back then they had produce markets, and I would just pretend that I was the owner, and I would walk around and I would look at it. And so I just couldn't get my mind off of it. So I really wanted to start a produce business. So I went ahead and decided that I got this really great idea. In the Valley, there were all these trailer parks for retirees, but they were kind of low income trailer parks, and you could park a trailer park there and you could pay Social Security, and there would be 700 residents and 1,000 residents. So I decided one morning to get up and see if I could do produce deliveries to the residents there. I knew they were old and retired. So I went to 3 trailer parks. All 3 owners said, hey, yeah, well, you can come through. So I went and bought a truck. And then my little brother and I, who was 16 at the time, went to the LA market for the first time. Super scary night. In the middle of the night, LA, it looked like Stalingrad bombed out city.
Right.
Scared to death. And we went on the LA market, and we started picking up produce and brought it home. And then we put it in the back of our truck, and we went through, and he would sit in the back of the truck and ring the bell. And people started coming out and buying produce from us. So it only took me I had saved up $700. And so it took me about a month and a half, and I lost all my $700. My dad was pissed because there was a bunch of raw produce in the garage. So I came home, but I was so demoralized that I couldn't brace myself to go in and clean it up. So he came home from work one day and cleaned the whole thing up. He said, don't do that again. So I went back to work in the produce in the store. And a friend of mine, my best friend in high school, went into the Navy. He came down to San Diego. And he got out of boot camp, in school here. He goes, why don't you come down? This is a way better place to live in the Valley. So I came down, and the company transferred me down in produce. And about a year or 2 later, I got fired. And so I've been doing some investing in real estate. And I had a pretty good chunk of money. And I was so hurt by that termination that I didn't want to work for anybody else. So I was 22, and I took the money and I opened up a store. And so that was a complete disaster. So the first year and a half, it only took me about a year and a half to lose a staggering amount of money, which I won't tell you because I want you to be able to sleep tonight. It's a lot of money. I ended up with nothing. And my landlord would come by and he'd go, yeah, you're going to pay me some rent? And I go, can you come by next week? So I started just paying quarter of the rent. And he stuck with me the whole time until I became successful. So it's a long story of doing really well, came too easy, got into a tough business, woke me up, turned me into a different person. And then I had to struggle for about a year and a half to 2 years. 1 year part, I had to actually live at the store in order to be able to maintain and work it. But I was determined not to go down.
Right.
And later I realized I got involved in databasing the information in the store. So I was one of the first ones to get the data register, connecting it all together, had all the data. And then I realized after 2 years that out of 1,000 items in the store, 85% of the gross margin was only 15 items. And those are the items. And those are the items the restaurants want. So I said, why am I killing myself here? I can deliver all that myself, not have any overhead, not have any employees. And that's what I did. That's how specialty produce started.
Okay.
So for the first couple of years, I worked on my own. And then later I brought my brothers into it as we became more successful. And
what chain did you work for?
Alpha Beta Markets.
And why were you fired?
That's a personal question.
Okay.
He's telling me his personal business.
You want to hear the rest of that story? It's going to make you laugh.
Yeah, we like to laugh.
After they fired me, my supervisor went into the store to my second man and said, I fired Bob because he's just plain dumb. And later he became a produce manager at Whole Foods. And guess where he bought his produce? He'd come into my warehouse and he'd say, "Hi, Bob," and I'd say hi, and he'd bring his truck in, and I'd load him up, and I'd sell at the quarter. So you never know how that's going to circulate, right? So I'm one of those lucky ones that got the last laugh.
You had the retail store in La Jolla, which is a fairly wealthy area, probably one of the wealthiest areas in the country, and certainly in California. And your clientele what were they like? Were they?
So that's a really good question. You're asking really, really, really good questions. So part of the benefit of working at Alpha Beta was I got to look at the margins at the different stores. So you get a district, right? And I noticed a pattern that the closer the store was to the beach, and no matter what district, the higher the margin. So when I went looking for a location in San Diego to open my store, I wanted to be right next to the beach. I didn't look at anything. And that was one of the good decisions that I made. Another good decision that I made is La Jolla is very academic, and people there travel. Yeah. So that was my first introduction to life in fruits and vegetables that went beyond red delicious apples, head lettuce. They're interested in wild mushrooms. They're interested in French beans. And so I began, I went to LA, to the LA market in 1982. And I went in, I don't even know what wholesaler it was, but I saw this really thin bean, and it was a French bean. And I went, wow, that's really cool. And I knew my customers would like that. So I bought the French bean, the case. I brought it down, and I put $5 a pound on it. And I remember thinking, I wonder who's going to buy that. The first person through the door bought half of them and was so excited to see French beans.
Wow.
That was in like 1982.
Okay.
So then one of my other customers says, yeah, I grow them. There is a seed company in Kansas that sells the French bean seed. Well, I knew a lot of the growers in San Diego, right? So she ordered a bunch of seeds for me and brought them in. And I gave them to some of the growers in San Diego, and pretty soon that spread. And from that moment, San Diego became one of the areas where French beans were being grown and shipped all over the United States. So it came from that one moment where a lady came in and bought the French beans. I saw it. Another customer said, I can get the seeds. I gave the seeds to a farmer, and it started a whole thing in the San Diego area. People started growing French beans, shipping them to New York, shipping them, all over. And then later, now it's all grown in Baja. But back then it was, that's how we got started on that. And I got a lot of small little growers to grow them. And we started that whole thing down here.
You'll see them on the menus as haricots verts.
Haricots verts, that's correct.
Yeah.
Which means green bean in French.
Yeah. Exotic name.
So food is like politics. It's very local. Mm-hmm. What's happening local here is not going to be necessarily happening. The minute I cross county lines, it's different.
Interesting. Yeah. Even today, you would say that.
And we grew up in the bean business. We shipped mostly snap beans, pole beans, cranberry beans. What else, Edwin?
Well, almost all types.
Southern beans.
Yeah. Greasy backs. Have you heard of greasy back beans, Bob?
I've not heard of those.
Yeah, that's a very local one here in North Carolina, primarily North Carolina, and they look a lot like an edamame, because the beans bulge, but they have this really shiny outside, and they're really sought after here. But anyway, yeah, our dad grew beans, and we grew all types of beans, and then he had a packing house where we packed and shipped them. So that's interesting. When you were talking about a long bean, I thought you were going to say mung beans, because that's another one that has become
mung beans. Yeah, isn't that the mung bean? Isn't that a bean sprout? It's the sprouted bean.
Yeah.
Well, they use it for sprouts, I think, primarily, but you can find the bean itself too in Asian markets.
It's kind of long bean.
It's very long. Yeah, very long. But anyway, let's get back to you. Okay, so the retail business opens in 1977, and for about 10 to 11, maybe 12 years, it survives some good years and some bad years. Yeah. But then you decide, look, I can reduce my overhead and just start shipping directly to these restaurants or delivering directly to them, as opposed to having them come, and you never know if they're going to come or not come, probably too. Right? So specialty produce opens up. And tell us about specialty produce, what you focus on within your customers, who they are.
Well, the customers really determine what we focus on.
Yeah.
And we only started off with like 10 items. I had the idea about spring mix. So before there was a commercial spring mix on the market, I went to one of my farms, and he was growing head lettuce, and he had a stand up in Escondido, and he would sell lettuce and other produce items off his stand. And I thought, there's this company in LA that's doing this specialized mix of herbs, lettuces, and they were charging too much money for the average restaurant to be able to afford it. So I said, you have all these different varieties of lettuces here. Why don't we make our own pack of these less expensive? And so we actually got an old bathtub in the back of his shed, and we took a couple of shower curtains, and he stitched them together. And so he would have his workers come in, and we picked the lettuce. Instead of packing the whole heads in a box, we began clipping them. And so it went into the tub, and he would mix it by hand. And then he would take it, and I would go up there in the afternoon, and he would take it, and they'd throw it on the shower curtains, and then we go like this. And it was so hot in Escondido, it only took a few seconds for it to dry the lettuce. Then they packed it in a 2-pound box. Within a short time, I was selling 1,000 of those a week and delivering them all myself to all the restaurants.
Wow.
And so since there was no name on the box, no one knew where I was getting it. So I began getting phone calls from the other produce companies saying, will you sell it to me? And I said, well, can't do that, but I know that you want to service your customers, so give me the name of the customer, and I'll take care of it for you. So that's how I began scaling, because I kept it very tight on the spring mix. But a year and a half later, companies started showing up in Salinas doing the spring mix, and they began. Right. So we never actually really ever increased our sales on spring mix. I get the same sales on spring mix now as I got 30 years ago because of competition. But we still do 1,000 cases a week. The pack size is 3 pounds, not 2 pounds. The price is, not that far off from what it was back then. But to be able to make that much money on a product and go that long without having a competitor really gave us the money to really fund the expansion of the business.
Yeah.
What's the ingredient? I'm sorry, Edwin.
No, go ahead.
I'm going to hijack this here.
Yeah.
What's the ingredients of your particular spring mix?
So back then it was just like a red romaine, a green romaine, a Lola Rosso, and maybe a curly green lettuce, and maybe just small normal garden variety lettuces that you pick young. You pick it after it's been in the ground for 2 weeks, and then it's tender, you cut it, you just cut the leaves off.
But once again, you were ahead of the curve, forward thinking. That's one of the things that in our introduction, we said about you, forward thinking and technology, shower curtains and bathtubs. That's some great technology there. The other thing that you did.
I'm never going to use technology if I can do it better with a shower curtain.
Wise, much cheaper too.
But don't you think that you were on the, sorry, Edwin, yet again, sorry. You were on the correct coast, because I find that California is so far ahead of everyone in terms of different foods, and this,
the openness
which
to try.
I have used a million times, the microgreens. The reason I can buy them in the grocery stores today on the East Coast is because the chefs used them, and that's how they gained momentum. Would you agree with that?
So, you bought a microgreens. Yes, I can tell you that microgreens are the biggest category that I sell. It's the highest, our biggest vendor is the microgreen grower here in San Diego. We write him a bigger check than anybody else that we supply anything from. And the idea is to be innovative enough, because back in the days when the people were experimenting with microgreens, we would do 5 high. If I sold, 30, 40, 50 pummets in a week, And if I showed you what I sell nowadays, it's just a staggering amount of product. So you're right. People here in California or in the environment that I'm in are really open-minded to new things. And the competition between artists is so great that they can't overlook any color. You can't go get a 16 set of Crayolas or 16 colors. You got to go out and buy the 128. Otherwise, you won't compete in this market.
Yeah.
So you have to always be on top of the ingredients and how they're being used, and that means you have to travel, and you have to have experiences, and you have to be networked. So yeah, all those things are correct. They all fit into that same category as the microgreens. Everything.
You have some great. You have some. Sorry, you have some great analogies. The box of Crayolas, the caged animal that's going to get too big if you're not careful. I love your analogies. So I want to hear about the farmers market program. You told me a little bit about this when we were together at the produce convention. Basically, you're going to local farmers markets and shopping for your customers there, so they don't have to take the time to do it, and bringing it back and providing it to those restaurants or anyone else who comes to your warehouse. Tell us more about that.
So when I originally started like a farmers market program back in 2004, I wasn't really sure how that was going to go. So of course I'm going to do the work myself. I save labor, right? So I would get up and I'd go to Santa Monica and I'd buy everything. And then I didn't want to just bring it in. I brought it back in the van, and then I drove myself to all the restaurants, and I would bring the chefs out to look at all the different stuff from the farmers market in Santa Monica. It's a great farmers market, by the way. I just spent a week in Market Union Square. That's a great farmers market. There's different ones around the world. Every state has a great farmers market. So I was really surprised because the very first time I did that, nobody would buy anything. Back in 2004, that wasn't going to fly. And so I paused it for 6 months. And then I went back in 6 months, and it's just started to get going. And now I think we sell $50,000 or $60,000 a week in small farm stuff to small restaurants. And it's a really specialized part of our company, because we have to talk to 50 to 75 farms a week. Those are small family farms. And then we kind of bring it into a system. And our platform is to have it here at the warehouse, so the public can come in and see it. The chefs can walk in and see it, or they can go online. We update the pictures almost every day. So we have a catalog system that is updating all the time with all the new farmers market stuff. The key is really the platform that gives access to the people who are interested at that time and moment to do something. And that's always the key, is how you frame that platform and how you get the chefs to have access to that at the time that they need to access it.
By the platform, you mean your website primarily, that where they can go log in, see what's there, and even place orders. Yeah,
so I just want to give them access to the information they need, and then if they have a need and they express that need, that we actually can deliver it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Back to the Santa Monica Farmers Market. If you've not been to that market, it is amazing. And Laura Avery, I'm sure you probably know her, Bob, Laura Avery, that runs it. And she was, I saw, voted as one of the most influential people in California a few years ago by some magazine. But let's get back to that idea of this animal not getting too big, and you focusing on local farmers and local supplies and local fruits and vegetables. How are those local farmers doing? Are they thriving? Are they struggling? And what's happening in that realm?
Well, I mean, I think we're not having any problems getting supplies. Yeah. I think the demand for local produce is so great that there is how would I describe it? An overhang of demand. Like there's more demand than there is product, probably.
Right.
And it keeps the prices high for the small farms, because that's the big thing for us at Specialty, is really keeping that small farm connection, right, and keeping those farms funded. And because we don't know how important that's going to be down the road. What's going to look at the lettuce crop was destroyed by disease in Salinas, right?
Yeah.
This year we're looking at $90, $100 case on lettuce.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy.
Right.
So we don't know what the future is. We want to have a lot of diversity in our farms so that we can choose, we can have many suppliers if needed. And it's really robust and it's very healthy financially in California. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I see I know how much we sell. It's a lot. And I'm just one small grain of sand on that beach. So I think the small farms I'm just guessing they're doing pretty well. So,
let's talk a bit about that, because in doing some research for today's episode, I came across several articles featuring you and specialty produce. And one thing that was consistent in them is they highlighted your passion and your sense of community among your customers and their customers, and then the farmers too. I love this. Can you tell us about how that value drives your business and what's important about that?
I think the word community is really important because it's not really specialty produce. It's a community of people working together so we can help each other have a sustaining life, right?
Right.
And if you ever think that we're really that important, I think it's going to be over. So we got to keep the mindset that we're here because every customer that walks into a restaurant is also my customer, right?
Yeah. Right.
So,
right.
And the community has changed a lot because, being a vendor in the 80s was really difficult. I got thrown out of a lot. One time I went into a kitchen to sell. One of my best customers now, back then, the chef was the young guys back in the 80s, probably around 88 when I was working alone. And I used to do what I call the road show. And I would get specialty items from the farms of San Diego and I would put it into a box. And I wouldn't make an appointment. I would just walk in with my road show. And so I did it so much, I didn't have any stage fright at all. So I walk into this really expensive resort through the back door into the kitchen, and the chef was walking around, and I would take my box and I would turn it upside down and I would build a display of produce and I would just sit. And normally what would happen in the kitchen is the chefs would just come in and they look at it. We start talking. I get the conversation going, and then from there I would, intuitively listen to them and see how I was going to angle my business into them. So I set everything up and I'm waiting, and the chef just walks by me, goes into his office, and there was nobody left in the kitchen. I saw him in there. He was going back and forth, and then I saw him put his coat on. And then the light went out, the door opened, and he walked right by me. And he went out, and I went, wow, he's going home. So when I picked all my stuff up, I put it in the box, I walked out, he was gone on his motorcycle, and he drove away. So that's, getting back to, so it's a matter of building relationships with people. Sometimes you develop a method. Sometimes the performance works in this kitchen, it doesn't work in that kitchen.
Right.
But it's really funny. 20 years later, I ran into him. He got ahead with a job in Reno, and he didn't remember me from that incident. I tried to bring it up. I was at a conference up there in food, and he would happen to be the chef at the hotel. And I remember that he didn't know who I was.
That's funny.
One of my chefs back in the early 2000s said, hey, my customer wants to know where I get this produce because you can't get it at stores. Is it okay if I send them to your warehouse? And that's when I started opening the warehouse I realized that I had to start opening the warehouse to consumers. So the consumers would come in and I blast them with the pictures on the wall, our trucks delivering everywhere. And then they associate the experience they have at the warehouse with the fact that we're in front of this restaurant. People want us to deliver them because we have a really strong commitment in the community. We do a lot of work at specialty with nonprofits in the community itself because we make our profit from the community. We need to give back. We need to be really open to whatever the community needs, and we do spend quite a bit of effort on that.
That's fantastic. That's very good. So I want to move to what I think I anticipated. It's been everything has been fascinating and very interesting, but what I anticipated to be the highlight is this mission of yours to go around the world and document and catalog as many fruits and vegetables as you can find. And You've been doing that for how long now? And how many places have you been?
I started like 20 years ago. I started actually in the early 90s. I wanted to scale up. I wanted to feed that animal. I didn't know what to do. So I was trying to figure out how to turn it into a profitable venture. And I was on an airplane over to Phoenix, and America West showed like this online magazine. And I started talking about a website. It was 1995 or early 96. And I couldn't get my mind around what the hell is a website.
Right.
And I didn't hear them say you can put information there and it's instantly distributed all over the world.
Yeah.
So I got really excited. I came back, said to my brother, who's in charge of our technology, show me a website. What is the website? And so he showed me, and I said, let's build a database to collect information. So I didn't want to spend the money to go out and do research and stuff like that because we were a really small company. We weren't probably not very profitable. And this is where this animal comes in. You know, you scale up, you want to do something, the animal gets bigger than the cage and it eats you.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had to. So I decided to design a system where we would design how we would write articles, how we would save the information, how everything would be done, all the business rules on every part of the articles. And then we would begin experimenting. So I did about 10 or 12 years of experimenting with writing articles. And then over time, we got it down to kind of a science. And then as I began traveling to do more research, I realized that everything was very fractured. My recent trip to India 2 months ago, I went to almost to the border of Bhutan in Kohima. And my guide took me to, it took a long time to get there over land, didn't have an airport. But he wanted to take me to a jungle market. And I saw things in there I've never seen, but they're so interesting.
Yeah.
And so I'll collect that information and I'll write about it, I'll publish it, and make it available. But which is cool. But then again, an apple company in Washington State will come out with a new apple, and we'll take that apple and we'll cut it and we'll photo it a certain way, and then we'll do the research on it and we'll publish that. So it's a combination of looking at different cultures in different parts of the world and writing that story from that perspective. And then it's also interesting to the people who live, let's say, in the north, in Southern California, when they get this new apple and they can go online and they can read all about it, the history of how it got done. So all those things became a package. In the beginning, I didn't realize how extensively fractured food was around the world and how each culture is so different. We just updated our article on mangrove apples. I took the picture in Borneo. Fascinating story. So you don't just get the information on the apple that's new coming into the marketplace at your local supermarket. We try to take you, across county lines, countries, and we want to develop that knowledge base.
Yeah.
And it's really much easier to control that scaling animal if you have a knowledge base than it is to try to do it without that. So it's just easy because you have this overhang of demand, right? The knowledge base demand. So you have this overhang of demand, which gives you that leverage to keep innovating and doing things differently. So the whole strategy has been long-term, create that knowledge base, create that overhang of demand, and then fill in that demand with the right budgeting, right? Because you don't want to lose money. You make money as you go. So that, in essence, is why I go to India, and then also I'm going to Seattle this week to do some research up there. Why I go there too. So the whole idea is a plan. Yeah,
listeners, you should really check out specialtyproduce.com and look at the amazing amount of information on any kind of fruit and vegetable. Just about, I think you told me you've documented over 3,000 different fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, far beyond 3,000.
Oh, far beyond. Okay, yeah. So
our project got started because I didn't want to lose the money. And I was trying to figure out a way to create that overhang of demand that no one really foresaw or can see. Our website is like popular in the world for fruits and vegetables. And I think we're over 5 million article reads every year right now.
Wow.
So it's and then we realized recently that because we analyze it with Google, of course, we have our own database, but we use a third party to validate. And then we created the trends. So we publish every single day what are the most popular items that usually correspond to what coming into season. And then we break it up by country. So you can go on our website, you can click on trends, you could select UK, you can see what people are looking for there. A new potato comes in, crop comes in, and you can see right away it spikes on our website. So website is a lens into what's interesting to different cultures and different people, or not only around the country, but also around the world. We're building that component into it, and now we're building in a component of forecasting. So you'll be able to forecast months in advance of what we think people are going to be interested in. But that's really accurate stuff. We capture that information. We tell you what the population is in a certain area is interested in that day. It could be somebody who's an influencer. They go to the supermarket, they see a particular apple, or this is over here, and they want more information about it. But they're not going to spend the rest of their life looking at produce. So we capture that 80% of the information where people come to our website on one-offs and stuff, and it kind of tells you what populations are interested in what. It's very accurate. We compare it with what we see here in San Diego. It's very accurate.
You can break it down geographically. That's really interesting.
We're going to be able to break it down by city now.
Yeah, right. And you've touched on this a bit, but just maybe have you speak about it a bit. You know, we often talk about exotic fruits, but where they're grown or where they're grown for the people there, they're not exotic. It's commonplace every day, right? So
growing in backyards.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your favorite fruit right now that you think a lot of people have never heard of?
So there's an interesting fruit I found in UK at Borough Market, and there's a tree down. So in the UK, in England, the English government began a reserve for apples and fruits, and it's only about an hour outside of London. It's called Brogdale. And they have 3,000 kinds of apples there. And we've been working with them for years doing our research. And we go there twice a year. They set up an office for us. My staff goes there, and we'll work intensely for 3 or 4 days. And we'll work with their experts, interview them to gather information. Because apple category is so big that it's just years on years on years of work to learn about them. So when I was there, they had a fruit that I'd never seen before. It's called medlar, and it's actually from Turkey.
What can you say that name again?
Medlar, MEDLAR.
Okay,
and,
medlar. Can you describe that medlar a bit more? What's it like?
It looks like it's brown like a walnut, shaped kind of like a walnut, but of course it has a texture skin of an apple. It's small.
Okay.
Size of a little smaller than a small apricot, or a little smaller than an apricot, and it has kind of a crown around the top of it. So it has kind of an organic crown on top, and then you let it get you let it get overripe, and then you kind of make some recipes with it.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
And that's considered to be an apple, even though it sounds so different.
No, it was introduced to me when I was in the UK at Borough Market, as they called it a Middle Ages apple, because the Romans brought apples to the UK from Italy during the time that the apple they brought was called Decio, DECIO, and I got this because Brogdale had the Decio apple. It has some trees, and I got to eat the Decio apple that the Italians brought, or the Romans brought over when they were there. It was the worst tasting apple I ever had. So, it had no flavor. It's like it was like the texture was all there, but absolutely no flavor.
Yeah. Maybe like a quince, huh?
To answer your question, that was unusual. I thought the medlar was very interesting. I'm very interested in also. I really like that mangrove apple, because there's some videos on YouTube where you can actually watch the natives, probably the sea Dayaks in Borneo, will go out into the mangroves, and they'll, it's in the water. They fall from the trees and they'll scoop them up, and there's a lot of people on YouTube who will do a demonstration of how you cook them or how you use them in the local culture. So those are things that I think are really interesting. Those are interesting stories.
Yeah.
And I think, interestingly, I think that, I like the idea of yellow watermelon. I love watermelon.
Mm-hmm.
And, the yellow and white watermelons they just sell out whenever they come into season. So I think that's an interesting fruit. We're all used to using the red watermelon, and yellow watermelon is pretty popular in Texas.
Did you say white watermelon?
No, there's a white wonder watermelon.
Oh, really?
I think it's out of South Africa. It was originally from South Africa.
Yeah.
And I think the original watermelons were white.
Okay.
And so
not very sweet, as I understand. They were pretty.
Yeah.
More like a cucumber.
And then in Asia, they have a lot of watermelons that have yellow skin on the outside, and they have more of a yellow and white psychedelic patterns. You go to Asian markets and you don't see like the green, red. You will see that, but you'll also see a lot of yellow watermelons on the outside. Some of
Interesting.
them are red inside, some of them are yellow inside. So
Yeah.
it's just different.
Right.
And,
How many countries do you think you've been in searching for fruits and vegetables? Do you know? You've been able to count those, or?
not that many, 20.
I'm
You know,
sorry. Say again.
Yeah, it takes a while. You go there, you got to like plan it. It's like,
Right.
It takes you years. That's why I have a staff now who goes for me.
Yeah.
Whenever it's going to be really hard work, I send other people.
Edwin
Smart
wants
man.
to see your passport to see how many times it's been.
I'm
Yeah.
on my third passport now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. You were showing me pictures at the produce convention that we were at, the IFPA, and he had just gotten back from India, and the photography is very well done. Beautiful, beautiful top photography of all these different fruits and vegetables he found. So looking forward to seeing those up somewhere at some point.
well, eventually I'll get to it.
Yeah. And what's your next venture?
I'm going to go back to Japan. I want to redo and look at what apples are in season there.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm going to visit my operative in Jakarta. I haven't been there since the pandemic. I have an operative in Jakarta, in South America, in Kazakhstan, actually.
Oh.
In Kazakhstan, I have someone there who speaks Russian and has a master's degree educated in the United States, who's doing a lot of research for me in the Russian archives.
Yeah.
And then with apples, and they have a lot of very interesting persimmons there.
Okay.
Way different than the persimmons that we have here.
And
I wanted to go on this trip back there, but I'll wait until March.
Yeah. Kazakhstan is where the apple originated, they think, right?
Exactly. And they have, and there's also, I understand, I don't know for sure. Sometimes you see a picture and it really isn't true. But in Nepal, they have an apple that's completely black. I've seen that on social media.
Oh, wow.
But I'm kind of like, am I going to really go through all that pain to get there? And maybe it's not all black. Maybe one side of it's black, and I got or somebody
like,
Photoshop.
I just tried my first red kiwi, and when you cut it open, there's a little bit of red in there, but it's mostly green. At least the ones I got.
Originally, I think it was photoshopping done. That's out of Asia.
Oh, okay.
And, it's out of. We got some in here, and we got it from our Japanese importer. There's a guy who buy a few things here and there from Japan.
Oh, okay.
And we'll bring a couple of cases when it's available, peak in the season.
Yeah.
Just to have.
Right. So what's your ultimate goal here in documenting these fruits and vegetables? Just to keep going and get as many as you can? What is there a broader, more altruistic goal?
I'd like to be able to make the project profitable. It's profitable now because it's so integrated into our local operations.
Right.
But that keeps the animal in a smaller cage, right?
Right.
So if I can get a digital product that's profitable, which we're selling it for sure every week.
Yeah.
But if it gets to the right level, then of course I build a bigger cage, right? The animal gets bigger, and that.
Yeah, I mean, I see you kind of like the work you're doing is well, first of all, it's gonna hopefully will live on. We've got some of the various earliest catalog in fruits and vegetables. I think go back to the Roman Empire. Even Pliny the Elder, I think, was one who wrote about them. But even on a broader sense, what's happening with some of the seed banks in the world that are trying to make sure they're preserving fruits and vegetables that are in danger of extinction, like the Global Seed Vault in Norway and Britain's Kew Gardens Millennial Seed Bank. What do you think about those, and are you working with them in any way?
No, I'm not. That's a different category of work, I think. But of course, I would 100% support that.
Right.
I like the work that and all over the world there are places where they're doing that. I mean, there's a lot of work going on in different places, and everything is, I haven't seen any shortage of food in any of the markets. I go to India, I got videos. I was just there at the market, a local market where all the families go, and I went there every day for a week, and it's just full of fruits and vegetables. If there's nothing,
and new things you haven't seen before often when you go, right? Or you?
Oh yeah, I find new things all the time. Yeah. I'm looking for things that aren't going to ever be grown in the United States. They could be, but they won't be because they're They don't even sell that many in the countries where they are. They're just interesting. So you got to do things that are interesting, as well as things that are fundamentally important to the food business itself.
Yeah, I'm a big history buff, and I think we're indebted to historians who really worked hard to give us record what was going on and this kind of thing. And I don't think there's anything more important than our food. Another movement, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is the slow food movement. I've been a member of that for a long time. I met Carlo Petrini years ago in Italy at the Terra Madre event, which goes on. But that's another one that I think you said it is a different category of work, the seed banks and slow food, but you documenting these things is, I think, one of the first steps in somebody saying, "Hey, let's find a way to preserve them." So, have you worked with slow food at all, or are you?
So I've never actually. I mean, there's a slow food in San Diego that was there for a while. And if there's an event where they wanted us to do something, we would always say yes, right?
Right.
And then we also look at what they want to put out. They call it the arc of taste, right?
Right.
And fruits and vegetables that show up there, of course, we're right on. If we don't have information on that, we go out and get it right away.
Yeah.
And if a certain pepper goes on it, it becomes very popular right away.
Yeah.
And the slow food is popular all over the world.
Right. Well, it started, as you know, as a kind of a protest against McDonald's opening up in Rome. And, it was kind of like, oh, well, so here's slow food. This is not that much fat. It's not that much slower to cook, especially penny pasta, which is what they first handed out. And it was kind of a joke almost, but it grew into an organization that said, hey, now we're discovering all these various types of not just fruits and vegetables, but all kinds of other animals that people were eating. And it became, the greater purpose became, we're saving these things from extinction. Yes. And also famine. One of the things they identified was that the world was getting you down to like 2 or 3 different varieties of rice. And if some sort of fungus swept across those rice fields, we'd have global famine. So they really started preserving this. So I'm just making that point that I think the work you're doing is hugely important, not just on an intellectual or trivial basis. This is important work. So I congratulate you for doing that. And I hope you can continue and grow it. So, we've talked about your website, specialtyproduce.com. You also have an app that people can download, and it's very, very helpful. So you tell us about those. Tell us more about how people can interact with you. And I guess those are the two main ways.
The app project, I started that 12 years ago, and took my time. We're actually, I believe now, over the next 30 days, we'll actually have the final version working. It doesn't mean it's going to be finished, but the framework is going to be finished because it'll be fully integrated into the other 3 components of our business.
Right.
But the way the app is designed, it's to give people who use the app the ability to share their sources for fruits and vegetables.
Right.
And they're a farmer, they can share their own, they could put their own products, a photo of it, into the share market with their information. So the whole idea of the share market is just to create a place where people can deposit information about fruits and vegetables that they wander into at market.
Right.
Or if somebody wants to just talk about themselves, they can put it in there. And we built it into our website. So anybody can go on our website and look at, on the very front of our website is all the current fruit pictures because people are more interested in fruits. So I noticed today that we had some shares from Kazakhstan and from Jakarta, but those are my operatives who I pay to go out to the markets and look for things that are interesting for people. So it's all part of that communicating the story of fruits and vegetables. And each of those photos are attached to the website. So you can click on a photo and then you will write to the article itself and you can read about it. But it's changing all the time because as soon as somebody does a photo of a new product, it replaces the one. They just move down the list.
Right.
So it's always changing and always working. The whole idea is to keep the story of fruits and vegetables top of mind for everybody.
Yeah.
We get about 15 to 17,000 people a day go to our website.
Wow.
So it gets a lot of views, and if someone wants to, do a share market on like their Apple, whatever, a lot of people are going to see it.
Right.
When I travel, I take a kit with me. So I have a full office with me. So it's just as if I'm at specialty. So the first thing I do in my hotel is I set up my office, right? And then I go to work. And so I'm already there. I'm going around hunting. I'm looking for what I'm going to do and what I'm going to find, because I've learned from experience that you just have to be ready, because you never know what's going to happen. You're going to always getting blown away.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't. He talks about, when I first met you and we talked, you said you've been collecting. And I thought, are you actually bringing these back? He said, no, I can't do that. But by collecting, he means documenting, photographing. And very, very seldom, I suppose, you can actually get them back to California.
So now I have, now that we've developed the animal, the cage is bigger, the animal's a little bigger.
Yeah.
I have a team that I can send out when I really want to do that. We're going to be going to Fruit Logistica in February.
Oh, okay.
And after that, I want to spend some time. There's a couple of things around Europe I'm really interested in doing.
Right.
So I might there. And then my friend from Australia is opening his warehouse. That's Suncoast Fresh. I think you should probably get Graham on your podcast also. He's amazing. I'm contact information. Follow him. Does a lot of social media. He has his own podcast there, by the way.
Okay. He's in Australia.
Yeah. Suncoast Fresh. You look there, Graham.
Okay.
I want to go visit with him. And he was really kind to take me around because I tried to drive in Australia.
On the wrong side.
I called him up and I said, I'm turning my car in, so either I'm going back or you have to come pick me up. And the second day there, I popped my tire because I couldn't park it right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I ruined a 700 series BMW in England once.
Oh,
when
you did?
It was brand new.
I want to go back in March. I'm thinking about asking one of my sons to go, pay his way so he'll drive.
Yeah.
I think if I was younger, I could do it. But
Right.
it's just, I think about too many things, like I got too much in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm never leaving Australia if I try to drive there. Have an accident, I'm going to go to jail.
Yeah. It's easy when you're on the busy roads, actually, because then you just follow everybody else. But it's when you're on the country roads and you're trying to pull out at night.
Cul-de-sacs there, it's kind of just
right. Okay. So, Bob, we have a regular segment on the podcast called Home Grown. Now, Teresa loves puns, and they're always terrible. But she loves puns about fruits and vegetables. So we do this little segment where she will tell us a pun, and we have to groan at it. Don't laugh. You've got to groan. But anyway, so are you up for that? You want to see if you can see it? Okay. So let me introduce it. Okay, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, it's time for your favorite segment on the Produce Buzzers podcast. Yes, it's time for Home Grown. Yes, Teresa has a pun during this to punish you with. So, Teresa, what is the homegrown of the day?
Well, I was kind of hoping to come up with something, about some kind of fruit that grows on a tree, but I got stumped. And but in the process, I read an article about this company that had come up with a concept for a restaurant on the moon. And everything about it, the food was good, all that, but it just wasn't successful. So do you know why it wasn't successful?
Other than the logical, very obvious reason, there's got to be, the restaurant on the moon. We always try to guess what the pun line would be, the punchline would be, but I'm struggling for this one. Why was the restaurant on the moon not successful?
Okay, because it had no atmosphere.
Oh, it had no atmosphere.
Oh, atmosphere. That's good.
Oh, I'm not supposed to laugh. I laughed. Anyway, that's great. Well, it's really been a pleasure. It's about your passion for fresh fruits and vegetables. What do you have to say to our listeners?
Appreciate being on here, and I appreciate people who are taking the time to hear about what we do in the business. Thank you for the work that you guys do. And we want to hope that we keep working together and build a bigger audience and create a more interesting knowledge base for people to enjoy.
Right. Well, one of our missions, and it was Teresa's vision, she has a foundation that is one of the missions is to encourage people to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, and primarily to help solve the health crisis. But we wanted to do it in a fun way, not like moms, eat your vegetables, and having people like you with the passion to come on. And as you said, you referenced this before, and we talk about that too. Just having fresh fruits and vegetables top of mind, thinking about them, we believe encourages people to eat them more. So thanks for the work you do. And I really hope it continues to expand, and we will certainly keep talking about it.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks a lot.
And we'd love to have you back sometime too.
Yeah, after your next one of your next trips, maybe we could focus in on what you found.
I'd love to do that.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Bob.
Thanks.
Good luck.
So
Safe
nice
travels.
to talk to you.
So nice to talk to you guys too.
Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page, and check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them, as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.